So in this video, I have an update for you on the Texas Suppressor Freedom case, which aims to stop the NFA and ATF regulation of suppressors. So let's talk about what is happening. But real quick before we jump into this video, if you think the NFA and the ATF's regulation of suppressors is clearly unconstitutional, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe. Also, I want to thank one of the new sponsors of this channel, which is First Form. Now, First Form is a company that I actually was using way before they ever reached out to become a sponsor. And what ended up happening is, I went on a weight loss journey, a fitness journey this last year. I recently finished the 75 Hard program on December 26th. The owner of First Form, Andy Frisell, created that program. I've listened to his podcast, so I was a longtime follower. And what ended up happening is some of the guys over at First Form who actually watched this channel saw me wearing some of their, merch, using some of their stuff. And so they reached out to me and said, hey, we want to support what you're doing here on YouTube. We believe in the Second Amendment and we want to support you and become a sponsor, which is absolutely amazing. So if you guys want to support a company that believes in our fundamental rights to keep and bear arms, check them out using the links down below. I highly recommend all their protein shakes, especially the Fruit Loop one. That one's absolutely amazing. That's the one I love. Again, you can check them out using the links down below. And thank you again to First Form for sponsoring this channel. So as I mentioned in the intro, in this video, we're going to be discussing the Texas Suppressor Freedom lawsuit, which aims to eliminate the NFA and ATF regulation of suppressors. The case we're going to be discussing is Paxton v. Dettelbach. In July, the federal district court issued an order granting the ATF's motion for summary judgment. That means that the case was dismissed in its entirety because what the judge found was a lack of standing. To me, that lower court opinion read as a big cop-out by the federal court judge, and usually that's the case when there's a lack of standing and they're throwing the case out because of a lack of standing. In that decision, the lower court ruled that none of the individual plaintiffs have an injury in fact to meet the standing requirement. Also, the court found that the state of Texas cannot stand in the place of its residents to sue the government to stop the application of the NFA towards made in Texas suppressors. Well, now the Texas Suppressor Freedom case has been appealed to the Pro 2A Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, and the first briefs have been submitted to the Fifth Circuit on why they should reverse the lower court's decision. And on January 2nd, the ATF will submit their arguments to the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals on why they should agree with the ATF and strike down this made in Texas suppressor law. Now, for those not aware, this lawsuit arises out of Texas House Bill 957, which passed just a couple years back. HB 957 aimed to exempt from federal regulation all suppressors that are made in and remain within the state of Texas. The claim behind this law is that since these items are made and sold exclusively within the state, they do not fall under interstate commerce and therefore fall outside the purview of federal regulation by the ATF. Now, after Texas passed this law last year, the ATF sent out a very clear warning letter threatening that they would in fact still enforce the NFA and GCA's regulations against made in Texas suppressors. So again, that's a big warning. We got to talk about some of this a little bit later, but the ATF's position still is that they're going to regulate these items, and you could find yourself still in a ton of problems if you engage in this type of conduct. Now, as a result, Texas, along with individual plaintiffs, then filed a lawsuit against the government and the ATF. The case was then submitted to a federal district court on cross motions for summary judgment. Well, after reviewing the case, the district court judge granted the motion in favor of the government, so he ruled in favor of the ATF. The court ruled in favor of the ATF under the rationale that the plaintiffs lack standing to bring this lawsuit. Under the concept of standing, legal actions cannot be brought simply on the ground that an individual or group is displeased with the government action or law. Federal courts only have constitutional authority to resolve actual disputes. Standing has three basic requirements if you're interested. First, there must be a concrete injury in fact that is not conjectural or hypothetical. Second, there must be causation or something that is fairly traceable, some sort of connection between the plaintiff's injury and then the complained about conduct by the government. Third, there also must be redressability, essentially that there is a likelihood that the requested relief that is being asked of by the court will in fact cure that injury. And then without standing, a legal action cannot proceed forward. Now, in this decision, the lower court judge stated that the parties only contest whether plaintiffs have suffered an injury in fact. On review, the judge found that they have not suffered an injury in fact, and therefore they have no standing. The judge, in his opinion, stated that individual plaintiffs are correct that the government has a history of prosecuting the illegal possession of unregistered silencers, but these plaintiffs have adduced no evidence that they in fact possess any illegal silencers or otherwise attempted any prohibited conduct, nor have they shown that they have been threatened with prosecution or that it is likely. And our doctrines of criminal law forbid convicting persons for mere thoughts, desires, or motives. Individual plaintiffs, therefore, fail to allege a substantial risk of prosecution based solely on the desire to do something the government has prosecuted in the past. So individual plaintiffs fear of prosecution is imaginary or speculative at best and insufficient for Article 3 standing. Here, the judge essentially stated that the individual plaintiffs would have to allege that they possess an illegal silencer or that they have engaged in some other prohibited conduct that the ATF claims is illegal. Also, the judge said that they would potentially even have to go through the process, file the Form 1 for these made in Texas suppressors, be approved or denied, and then maybe they would also have standing because of that process. But the position the judge takes is that even a showing of intent to violate the law would not be enough. Instead, you would need a plaintiff who would have to engage in the potentially illegal conduct, maybe fall on their sword for everybody, and then potentially they would have standing, or they would have to go through the process, be approved or denied, and then maybe they would also still have standing. But with all that also comes a lot of risk because the ATF is still very much enforcing this law, the NFA and GCA, against suppressors, even if they're made in Texas. And so again, it would expose people to a lot of issues, a lot of criminal convictions, prison time, etc. Finally, the lower court found that Texas as a state also did not have standing to sue on behalf of the residents. And based on all of that, the judge granted the government's motion for a summary judgment and then dismissed the case entirely in favor of the ATF. Now, in response, Texas has asked for the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals to reverse that lower court decision. In their brief to the Fifth Circuit, the state of Texas states to the Fifth Circuit that this case warrants oral argument because it raises issues of exceptional constitutional importance. Do Texans have standing to challenge the constitutionality of those statutory requirements before applying for permission and paying the tax? And does Texas also have standing to vindicate its quasi-sovereign interest in its citizens' health and safety? The state of Texas goes on to argue to the Fifth Circuit that the individual appellants reside in Texas and are citizens of Texas. They intend to make a firearm suppressor for their own non-commercial personal use. The firearm suppressor will be made in their homes from generic materials without the inclusion of any part imported from another state other than a generic and insignificant part such as a spring, screw, nut, or pin. They intend to own the firearm suppressor in perpetuity, to never transport it outside of the boundaries of the state of Texas, and to never transfer it to another person. And therefore, they argue that the Fifth Circuit should reverse the lower court's decision, which dismissed the suppressor freedom case in favor of the ATF. Now, recently in this case, the ATF also asked for the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals to extend some of their time, to give them additional time to file their response brief in this appeal, and which was eventually granted by the Fifth Circuit. However, the ATF will in fact need to file that response before January 2nd, so that deadline is coming up very fast. So the battle for suppressors is going to heat up very fast in 2024. The ATF is filing their brief on January 2nd, and then this case is going to move forward to oral arguments, which is going to be significant in the early part of next year. And the question is going to be, what is the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals going to do with made in Texas suppressors? And is there going to be a potential where the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals says that, yes, these made in Texas suppressor laws are in fact valid, and these lawsuits need to proceed forward. As many of you know by now, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals has been very favorable when it comes to these administrative law issues, especially with dealing with the ATF and these Second Amendment cases. So this is definitely an important case and an important appeal going forward. I know a lot of Texas viewers are very interested in this case, but I do want to remind everybody that the ATF still treats these items as regulated by the NFA. They've sent out multiple letters notifying people that violating this law will result in prosecution. So I do not recommend at all diving into purchasing, making, or selling these items. Again, not legal advice, but again, be very worried. I would not engage in this conduct at all because really it could just get yourself in a world of hurt. A lot of people are potentially being exposed to this stuff. Again, I've warned you guys all along to wait until this case is resolved before you do anything. But again, there is a very important appeal going on in the Fifth Circuit. Hopefully we get a Pro 2A win out of the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals once again, and we get a big win in this Texas suppressor freedom case. But of course, if we get any more information, I will let you guys know. Also, if you like this video and you would like to support the channel, one of the best ways to do that is to like, comment, and subscribe. All those things help to fuel the algorithm, and it signals to YouTube that you guys see value in these videos and in this type of 2A news. As always, I want to thank everybody who likes, comments, subscribes, who hits the notification bell, who shares these videos. You guys are directly impacting these videos, impacting this channel, and helping me to reach and educate more people than I could ever do on my own. But as always, thank you all for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And don't forget, this nation was built by armed scholars, and this nation will be maintained by armed scholars.